Marcus's boot struck the pregnant bobcat's side, her agonized cry freezing everyone on the suburban street as she fled into the woods, bleeding and terrified. What happened next would shatter everything he thought he knew about himself, wild animals, and the possibility of redemption. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. The peaceful suburban street of Oakwood Pines was about to become the stage for something extraordinary. As the golden sunset painted the sky in hues of amber and violet, casting long shadows across the asphalt, no one could have predicted how a single moment of cruelty would change multiple lives forever. This quiet community, where neighbors waved to each other and children rode bicycles until dusk, was about to witness nature's fury and forgiveness collide in ways that would leave them all forever changed. Marcus Fletcher stomped down his driveway, his face contorted with rage. At 42, he'd built a reputation in the neighborhood as someone you didn't want to cross. Today had been particularly brutal, passed over for promotion again at the construction company, then coming home to find his wife had taken the kids to her mother's after their latest argument. The pressure inside him had been building all day, a volcano seeking release. That's when he saw it, a spotted creature lying sprawled across the street in front of his house. A bobcat, right here in their suburban development. In his 15 years living in this Texas neighborhood, he'd never seen one venture this close to human homes. "Hey! Hey you!" shouted a voice from down the street. Marcus turned to see Jason Edwards and his 10-year-old son Tommy running toward him, waving frantically. "Don't get close. We've already called animal control." But Marcus wasn't listening. Something primal had awakened inside him, a target for all his pent-up frustration. The animal appeared dazed, possibly injured, its golden eyes blinking slowly as it lay stretched across the warm asphalt. Without thinking, Marcus raised his boot. "No, stop!" Tommy's high-pitched voice cut through the evening air. Too late. Marcus brought his foot down, not with full force, but enough to make the wild cat yowl in pain. The sound sent chills down the spines of everyone watching. It wasn't just the cry of an injured animal. It carried something more, something that made even Marcus step back in sudden, instinctive fear. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Jason shouted, pulling Tommy behind him protectively as they approached. "That's a pregnant bobcat. Can't you see her swollen belly?" The words hit Marcus like a bucket of ice water. He looked again at the animal, really seeing it now. The distended abdomen, the way she'd been moving slowly, likely looking for shelter, before the pains of labor overtook her. What had he done? The bobcat struggled to her feet, her spotted coat catching the last rays of sunlight. Despite her condition, she looked magnificent and terrifying. Her ears flattened against her head as she locked eyes with Marcus, a low growl emanating from deep in her throat. Then, with surprising speed for her condition, she darted between two houses and disappeared into the wooded area that bordered the subdivision. "You idiot," Jason spat, his arm still protectively around his son's shoulders. "Those cats are protected. You could get fined thousands for what you just did." "I didn't," Marcus began, but the excuse died on his lips. What could he say? That he'd been so consumed by his own problems he'd taken it out on a pregnant wild animal? Shame washed over him, followed quickly by fear. "Will she be okay?" "Why do you care now?" Jason asked, disgust evident in his voice. "You've probably sent her into early labor. She'll either lose those kittens or they'll be born somewhere unsafe." He pulled out his phone. "I'm calling Wildlife Services." Marcus stood frozen in the middle of the street, the weight of what he'd done settling over him like a shroud. He'd never considered himself an animal person, but he wasn't cruel. At least that's what he'd always told himself. Yet the evidence of his actions said otherwise. By morning, the story had spread throughout Oakwood Pines. Neighbors who'd once waved now turned away when they saw him. An official from Texas Wildlife Services knocked on his door, questioning him about the incident and informing him that interfering with protected wildlife carried significant penalties. The woman, Elena Rodriguez, was professional but cold as she took notes on her tablet. "The bobcat population in this region has been struggling," she explained, her dark eyes never leaving his face. "Urban expansion has pushed them into increasingly smaller territories. That female you encountered was likely desperate to find a safe place to give birth." The words twisted in Marcus's gut like a knife. "Is there anything I can do to make it right?" Elena studied him for a moment, seeming to weigh his sincerity. "We're organizing a search party to try and locate her. If she's gone into labor prematurely, both she and her kittens could be in danger." She paused. "You're welcome to join, though I can't promise anyone will be particularly friendly." Marcus nodded, accepting the judgment. "I'll be there." The search party gathered at the edge of the woods behind Oakwood Pines, a mix of wildlife officials, local volunteers, and a veterinarian specializing in wild animals. Marcus arrived early, dressed in hiking boots and carrying the backpack Elena had instructed him to bring with water and basic supplies. The looks he received ranged from openly hostile to cautiously curious. Jason and Tommy were there too, standing apart from the main group. The boy kept shooting glances at Marcus, a mixture of fear and confusion in his eyes. It was Tommy's expression, more than anything, that drove home the gravity of what he'd done. What lesson had he taught this child about how to treat the vulnerable? As Elena divided them into teams, equipping each with tracking tools and communication devices, Marcus found himself partnered with Dr. Abigail Chen, the wildlife veterinarian. Her expertise, Elena explained, would be crucial if they found the bobcat in labor or distress. "I don't know what to say," Marcus mumbled as they headed into the woods, following a trail Elena believed the bobcat might have taken. "I'm not usually." "Save it, Doctor." Chen cut him off, her voice clipped but not unkind. "Actions speak louder than words. Today you have a chance to make different actions." They moved deeper into the woods, the suburban sounds fading behind them. Dr. Chen pointed out signs as they went: disturbed ground cover, a tuft of fur caught on a branch, drops of what might have been fluid from a breaking water sack. "She's definitely in labor," the veterinarian confirmed, her expression grim. "And moving too fast. She should be settling into a den, not running." The weight of responsibility pressed down on Marcus's shoulders. Somewhere in these woods, a mother fought to bring new life into the world, her natural instincts disrupted by his moment of senseless cruelty. What none of them realized as they searched through the thickening trees was that the pregnant bobcat wasn't simply running away. Something more calculated was happening, something that would challenge everything Marcus thought he understood about wild animals and, ultimately, about himself. The search party moved deeper into the woods as afternoon shadows lengthened. Marcus followed Dr. Chen's lead, his eyes scanning the forest floor for any sign of the injured bobcat. Every rustling leaf, every snapped twig made his heart race. What if they found her too late? The thought of those unborn kittens dying because of his momentary rage made his stomach churn. "There," Dr. Chen whispered, pointing to a small depression beneath a fallen oak. Fresh claw marks scored the earth around it, and tufts of spotted fur clung to the rough bark. "She's been here, but moved on, recently." Marcus crouched beside the shallow scrape in the dirt. "Why wouldn't she stay? Isn't this a good spot for a den?" "It would be, under normal circumstances." Dr. Chen's voice was clinical, but her eyes, when she looked at him, held accusation. "But a frightened bobcat, especially one who's been physically attacked, will keep moving until she feels absolutely safe. She's using precious energy she should be conserving for birth." The words landed like blows. Marcus straightened up, his face flushed with shame. "I didn't think—" "That's obvious," came a voice from behind them. Jason stood there, having caught up to their group. Tommy wasn't with him. Likely left with another search party member deemed more responsible. "You didn't think about anything except yourself." Marcus opened his mouth to defend himself, then closed it. What defense could there be? He'd kicked a pregnant animal out of spite, out of a need to exert power over something when he felt powerless in his own life. The realization sickened him. Dr. Chen interrupted the tense moment, her attention caught by something on the ground. "Blood," she said simply, pointing to dark droplets on a cluster of leaves. "Not much, but she's injured beyond just the stress of premature labor." Jason's face hardened further. Elena's voice crackled over the radio, requesting a status update. As Dr. Chen responded, detailing their findings and location, Marcus moved a few steps away, needing space from Jason's justified anger. That's when he heard it, a low, keening sound coming from beyond a dense thicket of brambles. Not quite a growl, not quite a cry, the sound of an animal in distress. "Dr. Chen," he called softly, afraid of startling whatever made the noise. "I think I hear something." The veterinarian ended her radio call and moved quickly to his side, her experienced ears picking up what he had. "That's her," she confirmed, already reaching for her pack. "She's in labor." The three of them carefully navigated the brambles, Dr. Chen leading the way with practiced movements. The sounds grew more distinct, labored breathing punctuated by occasional growls of pain. When they emerged on the other side, they found themselves at the edge of a small clearing, and there, beneath the protective overhang of a rock formation, lay the bobcat. Her golden eyes fixed on them immediately, wide with fear and pain. Her sides heaved with exertion, and Marcus could see where his boot had left a dark bruise along her flank. Despite her condition, she raised her head and bared her teeth in warning. "Stay back," Dr. Chen instructed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Both of you. She's already delivered one kitten, but she's struggling with the others." Marcus squinted, and sure enough, nestled against the bobcat's belly was a tiny, wet bundle of spotted fur, eyes still sealed shut. But something was wrong. The mother kept shifting, unable to settle, her attention divided between her newborn, the humans, and the painful contractions racking her body. "She's trying to protect the one that's born while still delivering the others," Dr. Chen explained. "The stress is making the labor difficult. We need to give her space, but she also needs help." "What can we do?" Marcus asked, genuine concern overriding his earlier shame. Dr. Chen considered their options. "I have a mild sedative that won't harm the kittens but might help her relax enough to deliver. The problem is administering it without causing more stress." "And whose fault is that stress?" Jason muttered. But his anger seemed tempered by the reality of the suffering animal before them. As they watched, the bobcat let out another painful cry, her body contorting with a powerful contraction. But instead of producing another kitten, a gush of dark fluid soaked the ground beneath her. "That's not good," Dr. Chen said, her professional demeanor cracking slightly. "She's hemorrhaging. If we don't intervene, we'll lose her and the remaining kittens." The urgency of the situation hit Marcus like a physical blow. This wasn't just about making amends anymore. Lives hung in the balance because of his actions. Before he could think better of it, he took a step forward. The bobcat's eyes locked onto him immediately, recognition flaring in those amber depths. To everyone's shock, instead of cowering or attacking, she made a different sound, a chirping call that mothers use to summon their young. "That's unusual," Dr. Chen said slowly. "She's calling to you." "No," Marcus responded, understanding dawning. "She's calling to him." He pointed behind them. Jason and Dr. Chen turned to find Tommy standing at the edge of the clearing, having followed them despite instructions to stay with the other group. But he wasn't alone. Clutched gently in his arms was another bobcat kitten, barely larger than a house cat, its spotted fur matted and damp. "I found it back where you said the first den was," Tommy explained, his young voice trembling with excitement and concern. "It was crying. I think she was moving them one by one when we interrupted her." The mother bobcat called again, more insistently this time. "She's not just in labor," Dr. Chen realized. "She's been trying to relocate her litter, the one she's already given birth to, plus the one Tommy found. But she went into labor with the others before she could finish moving them all." Marcus looked from the struggling mother to the kitten in Tommy's arms, then back to Dr. Chen. "Tell me what to do," he said firmly. "Whatever it takes, I want to help her." As the gravity of the situation settled over the group, Elena's voice came through on the radio again, demanding an update. Jason stepped away to respond, leaving Marcus, Dr. Chen, and Tommy facing a critical decision that would determine the fate of the Bobcat family, and perhaps in some way, Marcus's own redemption. What none of them yet realized was that this injured mother bobcat wasn't just any wild animal. Her history with humans ran deeper than they could imagine, and before this day was over, the remarkable truth would change everything they thought they understood about the line between wild and tame. Dr. Chen made a quick assessment of the situation, her professional training taking over. "Tommy, I need you to very gently place that kitten in this carrier," she instructed, removing a small portable pet carrier from her backpack. "It's padded and we'll keep it warm while we help the mother." The boy nodded solemnly, his young face a study in concentration as he carefully deposited the tiny spotted bundle into the carrier. The kitten mewed weakly, its eyes still sealed shut, paws no larger than Marcus's fingertips. "Jason," Dr. Chen continued, "radio Elena. Tell her we need the full medical team here now. Code red, mother in distress with active hemorrhage and incomplete delivery." Jason nodded and stepped away, speaking urgently into his radio. "Doctor?" Chen turned to Marcus, her expression stern but focused. "I need to administer medication to stop the bleeding and help with the contractions, but she won't let me near her while she's conscious. Not in this state." She pulled out a dart gun from her case, loading it with practiced efficiency. "I'm going to sedate her, but I need someone to distract her attention while I get a clear shot." Marcus swallowed hard. "You want me to be the distraction? She already sees me as a threat." "Exactly," Dr. Chen said. "You're the one she recognizes. While she's focusing on you, the known danger, I can approach from her blind spot." The plan made sense, but Marcus's stomach knotted at the thought of deliberately frightening the animal he'd already harmed. Still, if it was the only way to save her life. "What do I do?" "Move slowly to that position." Dr. Chen pointed to a spot about 15 feet from the bobcat's den. "And then just be visible. Don't make any sudden movements. Just let her see you." Taking a deep breath, Marcus moved as instructed, feeling the weight of the mother bobcat's gaze following him with every step. Her amber eyes, filled with pain and primal fear, seemed to pierce straight through him. As he settled into position, she growled low in her throat, her attention now fully fixed on him, the human who had caused her pain. Dr. Chen used the opportunity to circle around, dart gun ready. The mother bobcat was so focused on Marcus, she didn't notice the veterinarian's approach until it was too late. With a soft pfft, the dart found its mark in the animal's flank. The bobcat jerked, hissing in surprise and anger, her eyes never leaving Marcus. Then gradually, her eyelids began to droop, her fierce gaze softening as the sedative took effect. "Quick, while she's going under," Dr. Chen called, already moving forward with her medical kit. "Marcus, I need you here now. No more standing back. You wanted to help. This is how." Marcus hurried to her side, all his earlier hesitation dissolving in the urgency of the moment. Up close, the bobcat was even more beautiful, her fur a rich tapestry of gold, black, and white, her face marked with distinctive stripes that gave her a perpetually fierce expression even in sedation. "Hold her head like this," Dr. Chen demonstrated, keeping her airway clear. "Good. Now don't move." For the next 20 minutes, Marcus remained frozen in that position, cradling the wild animal's head as Dr. Chen worked with swift efficiency. The veterinarian's hands moved with practiced precision, stopping the bleeding, administering fluids and medication through an IV line, and finally assisting with the delivery of the remaining kittens. "Two more," she announced as the second kitten slipped into the world. "Both females. That makes 3 total, with the one Tommy found." She quickly checked each tiny body, clearing airways and stimulating breathing with a small suction bulb. They're small but viable. Probably would have been another week or so before natural birth if she hadn't been stressed into premature labor. Tommy had edged closer to watch the miracle of birth, his earlier fear of Marcus seemingly forgotten in his fascination. "Are they going to be okay?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Chen nodded cautiously. "The kittens have a good chance if we can get them and the mother to a proper facility quickly. She's lost blood but is stable now." Jason returned, followed by Elena and 2 wildlife officers carrying a stretcher designed for transporting large animals. "Rescue team's 5 minutes out," he reported. "They'll meet us at the forest edge with transport." As the team prepared to move the sedated bobcat and her newborn kittens, Elena approached Marcus. Her earlier coldness had softened slightly, replaced by professional curiosity. "Dr. Chen says you assisted with the emergency care," she said, studying him with new eyes. "Not many people would put their hands near a wild predator, sedated or not." "I owed her that much," Marcus replied simply. "It was my fault she was in that situation." Elena nodded, accepting his answer without further comment. As they carefully lifted the mother bobcat onto the stretcher, securing her with soft restraints that would keep her from injuring herself when she eventually woke, Marcus noticed something glinting at her neck, a small metal tag, partially hidden by fur. "Wait," he said, gently brushing the fur aside. "She's tagged." Dr. Chen leaned in for a closer look. "Wildlife Service identification," she confirmed, reading the small numbers. "TXWR 2254. She glanced at Elena. "Can you run this?" Elena was already typing the code into her tablet. The group waited in tense silence, the only sounds the soft breathing of the sedated bobcat and the faint mewing of her newborn kittens now nestled in warming carriers. "Got it," Elena finally said, her eyebrows rising in surprise. "Her name is Sahara. She was part of a rehabilitation program 3 years ago, found as a juvenile with a leg injury, treated and released back into the wild in this general region." She looked up from her tablet, her expression thoughtful. That might explain her unusual behavior. She's had positive human contact before. The revelation sent a ripple of surprise through the group. This wasn't just any wild bobcat. This was an animal with a history, a name, a documented past that intertwined with human intervention. As they began the careful journey out of the forest, Marcus found himself walking beside Tommy, who was insisting on carrying the carrier with the first found kitten, now confirmed to be a male. "What happens to them now?" Tommy asked, his young face serious beneath his mop of brown hair. "They'll go to the wildlife center," Marcus answered, repeating what he'd heard Dr. Chen explain. "They'll take care of Sahara and her kittens until they're strong enough to be released back into the wild." Tommy nodded, his gaze fixed on the tiny creature in the carrier. "That man was mean to kick her," he said suddenly, his voice quiet but clear. "People shouldn't be mean to animals." The simple moral certainty of a child hit Marcus harder than any adult's accusation had. "You're right," he agreed, shame burning fresh in his chest. That man was wrong. Very wrong. What Marcus couldn't yet know was how this encounter would reshape not just his understanding of wild animals, but his entire life's direction, and that Sahara the bobcat had much more to teach him about redemption than he could possibly imagine. The Texas Wildlife Rehabilitation Center stood on the outskirts of town, a sprawling compound of modern buildings and natural habitat enclosures surrounded by tall privacy fencing. As their convoy of vehicles pulled into the parking lot, Marcus was struck by the professional efficiency with which everything moved. Within moments of their arrival, a team of wildlife specialists emerged from the main building, ready to receive Sahara and her kittens. "Take her straight to surgery too," instructed a tall woman with silver-streaked black hair pulled into a severe bun. Her name tag identified her as Dr. Miriam Holt, chief veterinarian. Her sharp eyes took in the sedated bobcat on the stretcher, the tiny kittens in their carriers, and finally the ragtag group of rescuers, lingering briefly on Marcus's dirt-streaked face. "You must be the one who called this in," she said to Elena, already moving alongside the stretcher as the team wheeled Sahara inside. "Yes, Dr. Holt, and we've identified her as Sahara, TXWR2254, from your rehabilitation program 3 years ago." Dr. Holt stopped mid-stride, genuine surprise registering on her face. "Sahara? Are you certain?" When Elena nodded, Dr. Holt's expression softened. "Well, I'll be damned. She was one of our special cases. We never expected her to survive in the wild, much less reproduce successfully." As they disappeared through the automatic doors, Marcus found himself standing awkwardly in the parking lot with Jason and Tommy, uncertain of their role now that the professionals had taken over. Elena seemed to sense their hesitation and turned back. "You can wait in the reception area if you'd like updates," she offered. "It might be a while." Jason checked his watch, then placed a hand on Tommy's shoulder. "We should probably get home, bud. Your mom will be wondering where we are." He looked at Marcus, his earlier anger somewhat diminished but not entirely gone. "Unless you need us for anything else?" Before Marcus could respond, Tommy spoke up. "Dad, can't we stay, just for a little while? I want to know if the kittens will be okay." Something in the boy's pleading expression must have resonated with his father. Jason sighed, then nodded. "Half an hour, tops." The reception area of the Wildlife Center was designed to educate as well as welcome. Displays about local wildlife lined the walls, and a large aquarium filled with native fish species burbled soothingly in one corner. Marcus found himself drawn to a photo display titled "Success Stories." There, among pictures of rehabilitated hawks, deer, and other woodland creatures, was a younger Sahara, her spotted coat less defined, her frame more slender, but those amber eyes unmistakable. The caption read, "Sahara, juvenile female bobcat, rescued with severe leg fracture and malnutrition, rehabilitated and released after 8 months of care, one of our most challenging and rewarding cases." "That was taken the day before her release," came Dr. Holt's voice from behind him. Marcus turned to find the veterinarian studying him with an unreadable expression. "Elena told me what happened. You're the man who kicked her." It wasn't a question, and Marcus didn't bother denying it. "Yes," he admitted, his voice hoarse. "How is she?" "In surgery. Dr. Chen did excellent field work, but Sahara has internal bleeding we need to address." Her gaze remained level, clinical rather than accusatory. "The kittens are in neonatal care. Too early to make promises, but they're fighters, like their mother." "I'm sorry," Marcus said, the words feeling wholly inadequate. "I don't have an excuse." "I'm not interested in your excuses," Dr. Holt replied evenly. "I'm interested in Sahara and her kittens. That's where my concern begins and ends." Tommy approached then, his curiosity temporarily overcoming his shyness. "Were you the doctor who fixed her before, when she was little?" Dr. Holt's severe expression softened as she looked at the boy. Yes, I was. She came to us barely alive. Someone had shot her mother for sport and left Sahara to starve. A hiker found her trying to nurse from her dead mother's body. The brutality of the image hit Marcus like a physical blow. And after all that, she ran into me, he said quietly. Someone else who hurt her for no reason. Not quite the same, Dr. Holt corrected. You acted impulsively, stupidly, but you didn't shoot a wild animal for entertainment and leave her infant to die slowly. She studied him for a moment. That doesn't excuse what you did, but context matters. A young technician in scrubs appeared at the hallway entrance. Dr. Holt, they're ready for you in surgery too. As the veterinarian turned to leave, Marcus called after her. Can I do anything? To help, I mean. Dr. Holt paused, considering. The center always needs volunteers for the dirty work nobody wants to do. Cleaning enclosures, preparing food, the unglamorous side of wildlife rehabilitation. She gave him a measured look. Come back tomorrow at 8 a.m. if you're serious. After she left, Jason approached, having overheard the exchange. You're really going to volunteer here? Marcus nodded, surprising himself with the certainty he felt. Yes, I think I am. Why? To ease your conscience? Maybe at first, Marcus admitted, but seeing all this... He gestured to the center around them. I didn't know places like this existed. People who dedicated their lives to helping animals that most of us never even think about. Jason studied him, seeming to weigh his sincerity. Finally, he sighed. Tommy was asking if we could come back to check on the kittens. You should, Marcus said. Both of you. We will, Tommy piped up, having drifted back to their conversation. And maybe we'll see you too if you're working here. The simple acceptance in the boy's voice struck Marcus deeply. Children could be so quick to forgive when they sensed genuine remorse and change. As Marcus drove home that evening to his empty house, the events of the day replayed in his mind. The rage that had consumed him seemed distant now, almost as if it had happened to someone else. In its place was a strange sense of purpose, fragile but insistent. On his kitchen counter, he found the note his wife had left before taking the kids to her mother's. We need space. Call when you're ready to talk about your anger issues. Lisa. For the first time, instead of crumpling the note in resentment, Marcus read it with clarity. His anger issues, the same rage that had led him to lash out at a pregnant wild animal, had been poisoning his family life too. He picked up his phone and after a moment's hesitation typed, You're right, I'm going to get help. I love you and the kids, I'll call tomorrow. Then he set his alarm for 6:30 a.m. He had a promise to keep at the Wildlife Center, and somehow he knew it was the first step on a much longer journey. Dawn broke over the Wildlife Center, painting the sky in delicate pinks and golds as Marcus pulled into the nearly empty parking lot. He'd barely slept, his mind cycling between Sahara's pain-filled eyes and the note from his wife. Both held mirrors to parts of himself he'd been avoiding for too long. He was 20 minutes early, but Dr. Holt was already waiting at the staff entrance, a steaming travel mug in her hand. She nodded curtly at his approach, neither welcoming nor dismissing. You showed up, she said simply. I said I would. She studied him for a moment, then pushed the door open. We'll see if you're still here by closing time. Most volunteers don't last past lunch on their first day. The next 3 hours were a brutal introduction to the unglamorous reality of wildlife rehabilitation. Marcus cleaned enclosures filled with various animal waste, scrubbed feeding dishes, and hauled industrial bags of specialized feed across the facility. His muscles screamed in protest. Construction work kept him fit, but this employed entirely different muscle groups. Around mid-morning, a young volunteer named Zoe was assigned to show him the proper way to prepare food for the different species under the center's care. She was college-aged, with bright blue hair and an encyclopedic knowledge of Texas wildlife. "So you're the guy who kicked Sahara," she said bluntly, as she demonstrated how to measure precise amounts of specialized formula for orphaned fawns. Marcus winced. Word travels fast. "It's a small facility," Zoe shrugged, neither condemning nor absolving him. "And it's not every day we get a case where the injurer shows up to volunteer." "How is she?" Marcus asked, careful to keep his hands steady as he measured the formula under Zoe's watchful eye. "Sahara, I mean. And the kittens. She made it through surgery. Dr. Holt had to remove her spleen, but she's stable." Zoe's voice softened slightly. "The kittens are touch and go. Premature births are always risky, especially in traumatic circumstances." The guilt hit Marcus anew. 3 tiny lives hanging in the balance because of his momentary rage. "Can I see them?" "That's up to Dr. Chen and Dr. Holt," Zoe replied, "but I wouldn't count on it. The neonatal unit is restricted to essential personnel only." As the morning progressed, Marcus settled into the rhythm of the work, finding unexpected peace in the simple physical tasks. There was something cleansing about the labor. Each scrubbed enclosure, each properly prepared meal was a small act of restitution. During his lunch break, sitting alone at a picnic table behind the main building, he finally called his wife. The conversation was brief but civil. Lisa seemed surprised by his volunteering at the Wildlife Center, but agreed to meet for coffee the following evening to talk. He was hosing down the raptor enclosures when Dr. Chen found him. She looked tired but satisfied, her surgical scrubs replaced by the center's standard khaki uniform. "Sahara's awake," she said without preamble. "Dr. Holt thought you might want to know." Marcus turned off the hose, wiping his hands on his borrowed overalls. "Thank you. How is she doing?" "Better than expected. She's a survivor." Dr. Chen studied him. Her earlier hostility mellowed somewhat. "Elena says you've been here since dawn, doing whatever grunt work they assign you. It's the least I can do." Dr. Chen seemed to make a decision. "Come with me." She led him through the main building to a secure area marked staff only, and then down a hallway to a room labeled Recovery 3. Through a large observation window, Marcus could see Sahara lying in a spacious enclosure designed to mimic a natural den. The BOBCAT was awake but groggy, an IV line running to her foreleg, her spotted side rising and falling with steady breaths. "We're keeping her sedated for now, Doctor," Chen explained. "Less stress on her system. Once she's stable enough, we'll move her to an outdoor recovery enclosure where she can have more space while still being monitored." "And the kittens?" Dr. Chen's expression tightened. 2 are holding their own. The male, the one Tommy found, is stronger than the others. The smallest female is struggling, but Dr. Holt is personally overseeing her care. Marcus watched Sahara through the glass, struck by how vulnerable she looked compared to her fierce presence in the forest. Will they be released back into the wild eventually? That's the goal, though it depends on how the kittens develop. If they imprint too strongly on humans during this critical period, they might not be suitable for full release. The weight of his actions pressed down on Marcus anew. "So I might have condemned them to a life in captivity. Or you might have saved a bloodline that would have been lost entirely," Dr. Chen countered, surprising him. "Wildlife rehabilitation isn't about perfect outcomes. It's about giving animals the best possible chance in less than ideal circumstances." As they watched, Sahara's eyes fluttered open, her gaze immediately finding Marcus through the glass. There was no fear in those amber depths now, just a drowsy awareness. For a breathless moment, predator and human regarded each other, separated by glass but connected by something Marcus couldn't quite name. "She recognizes you," Dr. Chen said quietly. "Is that good or bad?" "I don't know yet," she admitted. Bobcats have excellent memories, especially for threats, but they're also highly adaptable, capable of reassessing situations. Time will tell which way she categorizes you. Later that afternoon, as Marcus was finishing his assigned tasks, he ran into Jason and Tommy in the center's educational wing. Tommy's face lit up at the sight of him, while Jason offered a cautious nod. "You're really working here," Jason observed, taking in Marcus's dirty overalls and exhausted appearance. "Cleaning duty," Marcus confirmed with a tired smile. "Turns out wildlife rehabilitation involves a lot of poop." That drew a giggle from Tommy. "We came to check on the baby bobcats," the boy explained. "The lady at the desk said they're doing better." "I heard that too," Marcus said, pleased by the child's enthusiasm. "The little boy cat is the strongest. That's the one you found." Pride bloomed on Tommy's face. "Dad says maybe we can visit again tomorrow. Will you be here?" Marcus glanced at Jason, who gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Not quite friendship, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. "Yeah, buddy, I'll be here." Marcus settled into a routine over the next few days, arriving at the Wildlife Center before dawn and leaving long after sunset. The physical labor was demanding, but there was something restorative about the simple, clear purpose of each task. Feed the animals, clean the enclosures, prepare medications. Each action contributed to healing, to making something right in the world. The coffee meeting with Lisa had gone better than he'd expected. Sitting across from her at their usual table at Cornerstone Cafe, he'd found himself without his usual defensive armor. Instead, he simply listened as she detailed the toll his unpredictable temper had taken on her and their children. "It's like living with a storm brewing constantly overhead," she'd said, stirring her latte absently. "We never know when lightning will strike." "I'm getting help," he told her, meaning it this time. "I've scheduled an appointment with Dr. Mercer." The therapist she'd been suggesting for months. Lisa studied him carefully, wariness in her eyes. What changed? Really? Marcus considered lying, crafting some noble realization that didn't involve kicking a pregnant wild animal. But deception had poisoned enough of their marriage. "I hurt something vulnerable," he said finally, "something that couldn't fight back, and seeing what that meant, what I'd become, I couldn't look away anymore." To his surprise, Lisa had reached across the table and squeezed his hand briefly. "That's more honest than you've been in years. Not forgiveness, not yet, but an open door where before had been only walls." Now, a week after Sahara's rescue, Marcus found himself trusted with increasingly important tasks at the center. Today, he was assisting Zoe with monitoring the various animals' eating patterns, recording data that would help the veterinary team assess their recovery. "Sahara ate her full portion last night," Zoe reported as they compared notes. "First time since the surgery. Dr. Holt says it's a good sign." "What about the kittens?" Marcus asked. He'd been receiving regular updates, but hadn't been allowed back into the neonatal area since that first glimpse. Zoe's expression softened. "The two stronger ones are gaining weight steadily. The little female—" She hesitated. "Tell me," Marcus said quietly. "She's still struggling. Dr. Holt has been tube feeding her every 2 hours, but she's not gaining weight like she should be." Zoe's usual brisk manner faltered. "They're calling her milagro. It means miracle in Spanish, because that's what she needs." Marcus absorbed this, the guilt familiar, but somehow different now, tempered by the knowledge that everyone at the center was fighting for that tiny life with everything they had, including him, in his own small way. After lunch, Dr. Holt herself found him as he was preparing enrichment activities for the recovering raccoons. These simple puzzles and hidden treats would help keep the animals' minds active during rehabilitation. "How are you holding up?" she asked, her usual brusqueness softened by genuine curiosity. "Better than expected," Marcus admitted. Good work. Different from anything I've done before. Dr. Holt nodded, her experienced eyes evaluating more than just his words. Elena tells me you've extended your community service hours beyond what the citation required. Marcus hadn't thought about the legal aspect in days. The wildlife officer had indeed issued him a citation that first day, a hefty fine and 30 hours of community service for interfering with protected wildlife. But the hours had become irrelevant. "I'm not counting anymore," he admitted. "I thought not." She studied him a moment longer, then made a decision. "Come with me." She led him past the staff-only areas to a small, climate-controlled room he hadn't seen before. Inside, a specialized incubator hummed quietly, and beside it sat Dr. Chen, a tiny bottle in hand no bigger than a pinky finger. In her lap, barely visible in a nest of soft towels, was the smallest bobcat kitten, Milagro. Her spotted fur still damp from her most recent weigh-in, she looked impossibly fragile, more like a spotted mouse than a future predator. Dr. Chen looked up in surprise. "Dr. Holt? I thought our volunteer might want to see what he's actually working for," Dr. Holt explained. "All those buckets of disinfectant and bags of laundry translate to this." Marcus stood frozen in the doorway, overwhelmed by the trust being shown and the responsibility it represented. "She's so small," he whispered. 5 ounces as of this morning, Dr. Chen confirmed. "Should be closer to 8 by now." "We've been taking turns with round-the-clock feedings," Dr. Holt explained, "but she's still not getting enough calories to thrive." She fixed Marcus with a penetrating look. "Sometimes, with critical cases like this, we've found that consistency matters more than expertise. One dedicated caregiver rather than a rotation." Marcus felt a strange tightness in his chest. "Are you asking me to?" "I'm offering you the chance to make a tangible difference for this specific kitten," Dr. Holt said carefully. "It would mean spending nights here, learning proper feeding techniques, committing fully to her care for the next several weeks. No guarantee of success." The weight of the opportunity settled over him. "I'd need to arrange things with my job, my family. You have until tomorrow morning to decide," Dr. Holt said, already turning to leave. "Chen will show you the feeding technique either way. Might as well make yourself useful while you're here." After she left, Dr. Chen gestured for Marcus to wash his hands thoroughly at the small sink in the corner. "She doesn't offer this to just anyone," she said quietly. "Whatever she's seen in you these past days, it's impressed her, and that's not easy to do." With clean hands and a racing heart, Marcus settled carefully beside Dr. Chen as she demonstrated the delicate process of feeding the tiny bobcat. "Support her head just like this. The formula needs to be exactly the right temperature, not too hot, not too cold. When she's this small, everything has to be perfect." As the dropper of formula disappeared into Milagro's eager mouth, Marcus felt something shift inside him. This fragile creature, fighting so hard for life, was connected to him by an invisible thread of consequence. His action, her struggle, but now perhaps also by something else, his care, her survival. "Would you like to try?" Dr. Chen asked, offering him the specialized dropper. Marcus hesitated only a moment before nodding. "Yes, show me how." The next 2 weeks of Marcus's life dissolved into a blur of 2-hour feeding cycles, snatched moments of sleep on the center's breakroom couch, and more formulas, syringes, and incubator readings than he'd ever imagined existed. His decision to become Milagro's primary caretaker had necessitated a leave of absence from his construction job, a conversation with his boss that had been surprisingly easy once he explained the situation. "Take the time you need," Frank had said gruffly. "That project's not going anywhere, and this sounds important." Important didn't begin to cover it. Milagro's life hung by the thinnest of threads, her tiny body fighting hourly for the strength to continue. The feeding protocol Dr. Chen had taught him was exacting, The formula mixed to precise specifications, heated to the perfect temperature, administered in careful drops while monitoring her swallowing reflex. Between feedings came the gentle stimulation with a warm cloth to encourage elimination, the meticulous record-keeping of every gram gained or lost, every milliliter consumed. "You're getting good at this, Doctor," Holt observed on the 5th night, finding him hunched over the incubator at 3 a.m., carefully recording Milagro's latest weight. "She's responding to your consistency." The tiny bobcat had indeed begun to show signs of improvement. Her weight had stabilized and then miraculously begun to climb, first in barely perceptible increments, then in steadier gains that brought cautious optimism to the medical team's faces. 8 ounces, Marcus announced proudly on day 12, the digital scale confirming what his hands had already sensed. Milagro was growing stronger. Dr. Chen had smiled, a genuine expression of shared triumph. Throughout these intense days, Marcus maintained his therapy appointments with Dr. Mercer, scheduling them during the brief windows when other staff members covered Milagro's care. The conversations were difficult, excavating years of buried anger and unacknowledged pain, but for the first time, Marcus found himself fully committed to the process. "There's something different about you these past sessions," Dr. Mercer noted during their 4th meeting. "A sense of purpose I haven't seen before." Marcus considered this. "I'm needed," he said finally. "Really needed, in a way I've never experienced. If I fail, if I give in to frustration or impatience, something innocent suffers. There's no room for my anger when Milagro's life is at stake." The psychologist nodded thoughtfully. "And your family? Have you spoken with Lisa?" "We talk every day now. She brings the kids to visit me at the center sometimes." A smile touched his lips. "My daughter Emily has appointed herself Milagro's godmother. Brings little drawings for her incubator." What Marcus didn't say, but what filled him with quiet amazement, was how his relationship with his children had transformed. His son, Michael, who had grown increasingly distant over the past year, had begun asking questions about the center, about wildlife conservation. Emily, always more openly affectionate, had blossomed in the face of her father's newfound patience and gentleness. Lisa had noticed too. "They're not walking on eggshells around you anymore," she'd observed during their most recent visit, watching Marcus show Emily how to prepare enrichment toys for the recovering raccoons. "Neither am I." Sahara's recovery had progressed steadily as well. Moved to an outdoor enclosure where she could begin rebuilding her strength, the mother bobcat had demonstrated remarkable resilience. Her surgical wound had healed cleanly, and she'd regained much of her former alertness, though Dr. Holt noted she remained unusually tolerant of human presence for a wild bobcat. "Her previous rehabilitation exposure is showing," she explained to Marcus when he inquired. "She remembers that humans helped her before. It's making her recovery easier, but might complicate her eventual release." The 2 stronger kittens, now named Sierra and Sol, had graduated from the neonatal unit to a specialized enclosure adjacent to their mothers, allowing Sahara to see and smell them through a partition. The plan was to reunite them once all 3 kittens were strong enough, with Milagro being the final piece of the family puzzle. On a sunny Saturday afternoon, 3 weeks after the rescue, Jason and Tommy made another of their now regular visits to the center. Tommy had become something of a celebrity among the staff for his role in finding the first kitten, and the boy had developed an insatiable curiosity about wildlife rehabilitation. "Mr. Marcus," Tommy called, spotting him in the education area where he was giving Milagro her afternoon feeding. The kitten had graduated to a specialized carrier that maintained her temperature while allowing her more freedom of movement, and permitting her designated caretaker to move around the facility with her. Marcus looked up with a smile, carefully maintaining his hold on the syringe as Milagro eagerly lapped the formula. "Hey, buddy, Mr. Jason." He nodded to the father, who returned the greeting with much more warmth than those early days. "She's gotten bigger," Tommy observed, peering into the carrier with wide-eyed wonder. "Almost 11 ounces now," Marcus confirmed with undisguised pride. "Dr. Holt says she might be ready to join her brother and sister next week if she keeps gaining at this rate." Jason studied Marcus thoughtfully. "You look different," he observed. "Happier." Marcus considered this as he wiped a drop of formula from Milagro's tiny chin. "I am," he admitted. "Never thought I'd say this, but finding purpose in helping something heal, it's healing me too." Later that evening, as Marcus prepared for the night shift of feedings, Dr. Holt approached with an unusual request. "We're moving Sahara tomorrow to the final rehabilitation enclosure, the one with the pool and climbing structures. I'd like you to assist." Marcus looked up in surprise. "Me? Is that safe? I mean, given our history." Dr. Holt's mouth quirked in what might almost have been a smile. "That's precisely why I'm asking. Sahara's seen you through her recovery room window during your shifts. She watches you. Did you know that? I'm curious about her reaction when there's no glass between you." The prospect sent a ripple of anxiety through Marcus. "You think she remembers what I did to her?" "Bobcats have excellent memories, especially for threats," Dr. Holt replied. "But they're also highly intelligent, capable of reassessment. I want to see which category you fall into now." The next morning dawned clear and cool, perfect weather for a sensitive wildlife transfer. Marcus arrived early, his mind churning with both anticipation and trepidation. This would be his first direct encounter with Sahara since that fateful day on the suburban street, the day when a moment of cruelty had set in motion a transformation he could never have anticipated. The transport team assembled at Sahara's recovery enclosure just after dawn. Dr. Holt led the operation with Dr. Chen assisting, while 3 experienced handlers stood ready with specialized equipment, padded gloves, a transport carrier, and long-handled nets that would only be used if absolutely necessary. "The goal is minimal stress," Dr. Holt reminded them during the briefing. "Sahara's physically recovered, but emotional trauma can linger. We want her to associate the new enclosure with positive experiences from the start." Marcus stood slightly apart from the team, Milagro's carrier secure at his feet. The tiny kitten was sleeping peacefully after her dawn feeding, unaware of the significance of the day's events. He would join the operation once Milagro was safely settled in the nursery with a backup caretaker. "You sure about this?" Dr. Chen asked him quietly as the others prepared the equipment. "Your history with Sahara is complicated." Marcus nodded, though his pulse raced at the prospect. "If Dr. Holt thinks it's important, I trust her judgment." "It's not just her judgment," Dr. Chen replied. "It's yours too. If at any point you feel uncomfortable, you back away immediately. Predator reintroduction is unpredictable even under ideal circumstances." After delivering Milagro to the nursery, Marcus joined the team outside Sahara's enclosure. Dr. Holt handed him a pair of the specialized handling gloves. "You won't be touching her," she clarified, "but protocol requires all team members to be properly equipped. Your role is observation primarily, and assistance only if directed." Sahara was awake when they entered, her amber eyes tracking each human with alert wariness. Her recovery had been remarkable. The bobcat that now stood poised in the corner of the enclosure looked strong and vital, her spotted coat gleaming with health, showing little evidence of her ordeal beyond a patch of shorter fur where the surgery had been performed. Dr. Holt approached first, moving with the calm confidence of decades of experience. "Easy, Sahara," she murmured, "just another checkup." The bobcat permitted the veterinarian's approach, remaining still as Dr. Holt conducted a visual assessment, but when her gaze shifted to Marcus, something changed in her demeanor. A subtle tensing, a heightened awareness that sent a ripple of concern through the team. "She's recognized you," Dr. Holt said quietly. "Stay where you are." Marcus froze, barely breathing as the bobcat's unblinking stare fixed on him. In that moment, the suburban street seemed a lifetime away. The man who had lashed out in senseless anger felt like a stranger to him now. But to Sahara, was he still that same threat? The silence stretched, broken only by the soft sounds of birds outside and the bobcat's steady breathing. Then, to everyone's surprise, Sahara did something unexpected. She sat down, her posture relaxing incrementally while maintaining her focused gaze on Marcus. "Well, I'll be damned," Dr. Holt murmured. "She's not displaying defensive posturing." "What does that mean?" Marcus asked, barely moving his lips. "It means she doesn't currently perceive you as a threat," Dr. Chen explained. "She's cautious, but not fearful or aggressive." The bobcat continued watching him with what almost seemed like curiosity. After several more moments of this silent assessment, she yawned, a gesture that in another context might have seemed casual, but here represented a profound statement about her comfort level. "Extraordinary," Dr. Holt said. "I've rarely seen this level of trauma recovery in a wild predator. Most would maintain defensive responses toward anyone associated with a negative experience, especially one as recent as this." The transport itself proceeded smoothly after that unexpected beginning. Using gentle guidance techniques and a trail of favored treats, the team successfully coaxed Sahara into the specialized carrier. Throughout the process, she remained calm, even as Marcus moved to his assigned position, holding open doors and clearing pathways. The new enclosure was the center's crown jewel, a spacious outdoor habitat with natural vegetation, climbing structures, shaded retreats, and a small pool. Designed to mimic the bobcat's natural environment while allowing for observation, it represented the final stage before release back into the wild. When the carrier door was opened, Sahara emerged cautiously, taking her time to investigate her new surroundings. The team withdrew to the observation area, watching through one-way glass as the bobcat began to explore, testing the climbing structures and investigating the scent markings deliberately left to stimulate her territorial instincts. "This is where we'll reunite her with the kittens once they're ready," Dr. Holt explained. "Sierra and Saul could join her as early as next week if their development continues on schedule. Milagro will need more time." Marcus watched Sahara move through her new environment, her natural grace returning more with each confident step. "She's beautiful," he said softly. "Yes," Dr. Holt agreed, "and remarkably resilient." She turned to study him with the same clinical assessment she applied to her animal patients. "As it seems, are you?" After the successful transfer, Marcus returned to the nursery where Milagro awaited her mid-morning feeding. The tiny kitten had awakened and was making the small, insistent sounds that indicated hunger. As he prepared her formula with practiced hands, his mind remained fixed on the encounter with Sahara, the measured assessment in those amber eyes, the surprising absence of fear or aggression. "Your mom's doing great," he told Milagro as she eagerly accepted the dropper, her tiny paws pressing against his fingers. "Strong enough now for the pre-release enclosure. You'll be joining her before you know it." Later that afternoon, as Marcus was reviewing Milagro's weight charts with Dr. Chen, Lisa arrived with Michael and Emily for their now regular weekend visit. The children immediately gravitated toward the carrier where Milagro was visible, Emily clutching another drawing to add to the growing collection taped to the side. "How did it go this morning?" Lisa asked, having been briefed on the planned transfer. "Better than anyone expected," Marcus admitted. "Sahara seems to have, I don't know if forgiven is the right word, but she doesn't see me as a threat anymore." Lisa studied him thoughtfully. "Animals are good judges of character," she said. "They respond to who you are now, not who you were then." The simple observation carried profound weight, touching something deep within Marcus. Was that the lesson in all this? That redemption wasn't about erasing the past, but about creating a present so different that it opened possibilities for a new future. As if sensing his thoughts, Lisa reached out and squeezed his hand briefly, the most direct physical contact they'd shared in months. Michael's science teacher is interested in bringing his class here for a field trip. I mentioned your involvement, and he wondered if you might help coordinate. The request, so normal, so domestic, yet representing such a profound shift in how his family perceived him, left Marcus momentarily speechless. "I'd like that," he finally managed, his voice rough with emotion. What neither of them could have predicted, as they stood watching their children marvel over the tiny bobcat kitten, was how this unexpected chapter in their lives was about to take an even more remarkable turn. The following week brought a flurry of activity to the Wildlife Center. Sierra and Saul, now thriving at a healthy weight with their eyes fully open and their spotted coats fluffing out, were deemed ready to rejoin their mother. The reunion was scheduled as a carefully orchestrated event, with the entire veterinary team standing by to intervene if necessary. Wild mothers sometimes reject kittens after prolonged separation, Dr. Holt explained during the briefing. But Sahara's previous exposure to humans and her consistent interest in the kitten's scent samples suggest she'll accept them readily. Marcus, still dedicated to Milagros' care, was invited to observe the reunion through the one-way glass of the observation deck. The tiny runt of the litter had continued her remarkable progress, now weighing almost 14 ounces and beginning to display the playful behaviors typical of bobcat kittens her age. Though still smaller than her siblings, she grew more active daily, batting at enrichment toys with surprising strength and practicing wobbly attempts at climbing the specially designed structures in her nursery enclosure. Her progress is nothing short of remarkable, Dr. Chen told Marcus that morning, reviewing Milagros' latest health assessment. Another 2 weeks and she could be ready to join the family. The words filled Marcus with a complex mixture of pride and preemptive loss. He'd spent nearly every day of the past month with the tiny bobcat, watching her fight for survival with a determination that humbled him. The thought of her eventual reunion with her family and the release back to the wild that would eventually follow left him with an unexpected emptiness. "That's the goal," he acknowledged, "getting them all back to where they belong." Dr. Chen studied him with knowing eyes. "The hardest part of rehabilitation is letting go," she said gently, "but it's also the most important." The reunion itself was a moment of such pure animal instinct and connection that it brought tears to the eyes of even the most seasoned staff members. When Sierra and Saul were carefully placed in Sahara's enclosure, the mother bobcat approached them cautiously, circling and sniffing each kitten thoroughly before beginning to groom them with rough, thorough licks. The kittens responded with immediate recognition, pressing against their mother's warm fur and making small chirping sounds of contentment. "Perfect acceptance," Dr. Holt murmured, satisfaction evident in her voice. No signs of stress or rejection. As the small family settled into their reunion, Marcus felt a hand slip into his. Lisa had arrived silently beside him, watching the scene unfold with matching wonder. "Emily has a school presentation tomorrow," she said quietly, "about wildlife conservation. She's asked if you would help her practice tonight." The simple request carried layers of meaning that weren't lost on Marcus. "I'll be there," he promised. That evening, for the first time in over a month, Marcus returned to the house he had once taken for granted. The familiar driveway, the children's bicycles propped against the garage door, the porch light his wife had left on. All of it felt both achingly familiar and somehow new, as if he were seeing his life through different eyes. Inside, the family dinner that followed held none of the tense silences or sudden eruptions that had characterized their meals before. Instead, Michael eagerly shared details about his science project, a study of local watershed pollution that had been inspired by Marcus's work at the Wildlife Center. Emily proudly displayed her presentation materials, complete with carefully drawn pictures of bobcats labeled with facts she'd gleaned from her visits. Bobcat mothers are very protective, she explained solemnly as Marcus helped her arrange her poster board. They teach their babies how to hunt and survive, but sometimes they need help from people like Daddy. The simplicity of her statement caught Marcus off guard, emotion tightening his throat. When had he become someone his daughter spoke of with such unquestioning pride? Later, after the children were in bed, Marcus and Lisa sat together on the porch swing, the evening air warm around them. The comfortable silence between them felt like its own form of healing. "I've been thinking," Lisa said finally. "The lease on your apartment is up next month." Marcus nodded, waiting. "Maybe it's time you came home instead of renewing it," she suggested, her voice careful but hopeful. "The kids miss you. I miss you." The words he'd longed to hear for months now hung in the air between them. Marcus took her hand, his thumb tracing the familiar contours of her wedding ring. "Are you sure?" he asked quietly. "I don't want to rush anything if you're not ready." Lisa turned to face him, her expression serious. "The man who left here wouldn't have asked that question. He would have assumed he deserved to come back without considering what I needed." She smiled slightly. "You're not that man anymore." The next morning, Marcus arrived at the center earlier than usual, his mind still processing the possibility of reuniting his own family as Sahara had reunited with her kittens. He headed straight to the nursery where Milagro awaited her morning feeding, but found Dr. Holt already there, her expression grave. "What's wrong?" Marcus asked immediately, fear clutching at his chest as he hurried to the incubator. "She spiked a fever overnight," Dr. Holt explained, nodding toward the tiny bobcat. "Respiratory infection, not uncommon in hand-raised kittens, but concerning given her size and history." Milagro lay in her bedding, her usually bright eyes dull and her breathing labored. The sight struck Marcus like a physical blow. "What can we do?" "I've started her on antibiotics," Dr. Holt replied. "The next 24 hours will be critical. She'll need constant monitoring." Without hesitation, Marcus canceled his plans for the day, including a promising job interview Lisa had helped him arrange at an ecological construction company. Some things mattered more than others, and he'd made a promise to this tiny fighter that he intended to keep. Throughout that day and the long night that followed, Marcus maintained his vigil beside Milagro's incubator, administering medications, monitoring her temperature, and offering small droppers of water when she would accept them. Dr. Holt and Dr. Chen took turns checking in, their concerned expressions telling Marcus everything their measured words did not. Milagro's condition was precarious. "Talk to her," Dr. Chen suggested during the darkest hours of the night, when Milagro's breathing had become particularly labored. "Sometimes, with animals we've hand-raised, human voice can be comforting." And so Marcus talked, hours of quiet monologue that traced the journey they'd both taken from that fateful moment on the suburban street to this sterile room where life and death balanced on the edge of a razor. "You can't give up now," he whispered as dawn approached, his voice hoarse from hours of continuous speaking. "You fought too hard, come too far. Your mom and your brother and sister are waiting for you." As the first rays of sunlight filtered through the nursery windows, Milagro opened her eyes and looked directly at Marcus. Then, to his astonishment, she struggled to her feet on wobbly legs and took a shaky step toward his outstretched hand. Milagro's fight wasn't over, but that single determined step marked a turning point in her recovery. Over the next few days, her fever gradually subsided, her appetite returned, and the sparkle of life rekindled in her amber eyes. Dr. Holt, typically reserved with her prognoses, finally allowed herself a smile of satisfaction during the morning examination 1 week later. "She's beaten it," she confirmed, listening to the kitten's chest with a pediatric stethoscope. "Lungs are clearing nicely. No more antibiotics needed." Relief washed over Marcus like a physical wave. "When do you think she can join her family?" "Another week of observation to ensure there's no relapse," Dr. Holt replied. "Then we'll begin the reintroduction process." That week passed in a blur of anticipation. Marcus continued his round-the-clock care of Milagro, but the nature of that care had evolved. No longer fighting for survival, the tiny bobcat now demanded more challenging enrichment activities and longer play sessions. Her personality emerged more clearly with each passing day, determined but cautious, observant but playful when she felt secure. Meanwhile, Sierra and Saul were thriving under their mother's care in the pre-release enclosure. Staff reported that Sahara had proven to be an attentive mother, grooming her kittens meticulously and beginning to demonstrate hunting behaviors for them to mimic. The bobcat family had become something of a celebrity at the center, with the observation deck often crowded with visitors hoping to catch a glimpse of the reunited mother and kittens. The day of Milagro's reintroduction arrived with perfect early summer weather. Clear skies and mild temperatures ideal for minimizing stress during the sensitive procedure. The team had prepared meticulously, with Dr. Holt, Dr. Chen, and Marcus developing a detailed plan for integrating the smallest kitten back into the family unit. "Remember," Dr. Holt cautioned as they prepared the transport carrier, "once Milagro rejoins her family, our direct interaction stops. This is the beginning of their journey back to the wild." Marcus nodded, understanding the bittersweet necessity of this transition. As Milagro's primary caretaker, he would be permitted to observe the reunion from the observation deck but would no longer have direct contact with the kitten he'd nursed back from the edge of death. "I know," he said quietly. "That's always been the goal." Lisa had taken the morning off work to join him for this milestone, standing supportively at his side as the team prepared for the transfer. In the weeks since his dinner at home, their relationship had continued its careful healing. Marcus had begun spending weekends at the house, rebuilding connections with the children and cautiously rekindling the partnership that had once seemed beyond repair. "You okay?" Lisa asked, noticing his pensive expression as they watched the final preparations. "Just thinking about how far we've all come," he replied. "Milagro, Sahara, us." The actual reintroduction was conducted with surgical precision. Milagro, secure in her transport carrier, was placed within the enclosure at a careful distance from where Sahara rested with Sierra and Sul. The carrier door was opened remotely, allowing the smallest kitten to emerge at her own pace, while the team monitored from a distance. What followed was a moment of such pure animal instinct that it brought tears to Marcus's eyes. Milagro cautiously emerged from the carrier, her tiny nose working overtime as she picked up the scents of her mother and siblings. Sahara's head came up immediately, her attention locked on the newcomer with laser focus. For one tense moment, the mother bobcat remained perfectly still, evaluating this strange yet familiar kitten. Then, with deliberate grace, she rose and approached Milagro, circling her smaller offspring with careful assessment. "This is the critical moment," Dr. Holt murmured. "If she's going to reject her, it will be now." But Sahara did not reject her smallest kitten. Instead, after a thorough inspection, she began to groom Milagro with the same attentive care she showed her other offspring. The tiny kitten responded with immediate recognition, pressing against her mother's warmth and making the soft, chirping sounds that had become familiar to Marcus during their weeks together. Sierra and Saul approached next, curious about this new addition to their family circle. The three siblings engaged in tentative sniffing and batting at each other, the natural play behaviors that would eventually develop into hunting skills crucial for their survival. Perfect acceptance, Dr. Chen noted, echoing Dr. Holt's words from the earlier reunion. The family is complete. As the BOBCAT family settled into their new dynamic, Marcus felt Lisa's hand slip into his, her fingers intertwining with his own in a gesture that carried its own message of reunion and acceptance. 2 months later, on a crisp September morning, Marcus stood with his family and a small gathering of wildlife center staff at the remote edge of a protected wilderness area. The specialized transport vehicle containing the BOBCAT family had arrived before dawn, positioned carefully at the selected release site, a location with abundant prey, suitable den sites, and minimal human activity. Dr. Holt addressed the small group briefly before the release. This is the culmination of everything we work for, returning healthy animals to their natural habitat. Sahara and her kittens represent a significant conservation success, not just for their species, but for the ecosystem they're rejoining. When the transport carrier doors were opened remotely, the family emerged together, Sahara first, followed by her 3 growing kittens, now nearly indistinguishable in size. Milagro, her early struggles evident only in a slightly more cautious demeanor, stayed closest to her mother as they surveyed their new surroundings. The humans remained absolutely silent, barely breathing as the BOBCATs took their first steps back into true wilderness. The family moved with increasing confidence toward the shelter of the forest edge, pausing once at the threshold between open ground and protective cover. To everyone's astonishment, Sahara turned back briefly, her amber gaze sweeping across the assembled humans before settling unmistakably on Marcus. In that moment of connection, something unspoken passed between man and animal, an acknowledgement perhaps of the strange journey that had brought them both to this place of new beginnings. Then, with a flick of her spotted tail, Sahara led her family into the forest, disappearing into the dappled shadows of their rightful home. As the group began the quiet walk back to their vehicles, Emily slipped her hand into Marcus's. "Dad, can we come back sometime to see if they're okay?" "They need to be truly wild now," he explained gently. "But the center has trail cameras that will let us know they're doing well." That evening, as Marcus helped Lisa prepare dinner in the kitchen of the home they now shared again, he found himself reflecting on the unlikely chain of events that had transformed his life. One moment of cruelty had opened a door to compassion he hadn't known existed within him. One injured BOBCAT had shown him that healing was possible even from the deepest wounds. Outside their kitchen window, the suburban street lay peaceful in the gathering dusk. No wild BOBCATs roamed there now, but Marcus carried their lesson with him. That redemption wasn't found in erasing the past, but in the courage to create a different future, one careful, determined step at a time.